We're still making volume 4. Now, I finished all the line work. So now I'm in the shading stage. Yeah. I said before in previous videos, I kind of do all the steps at once. I do all the roughs, go through the whole thing. Not always. Sometimes I do it by chapter. So like, roughs chapter 1, then, maybe do some line works, then roughs chapter 2, then the line work. But I finished the line work for the whole thing. All right. So now I'm in the shading stage. And so now I'm going through chapter 1, shading. And I do a lot of this by hand. Sometimes I drop some stuff here and there. Depending on how I feel, I might be getting lazy. But I prefer to do everything by hand. And to be honest, like, my skills really stop at the line work. When it comes to shading and coloring, not that good at it. Like, there's no kind of like a light perspective rule going on here. Like, there's no shading from the light source. I'm just shading it in and make it look cool. So I like doing that, Sometimes I'll do the light source thing if it's a narrative reason, like the room is dark or light is blinded somebody for, it's multiple reasons that light will be used narratively. But if it's not a narrative reason for that type of lighting, then I'm just making it look cool, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe other people might hate my shading. Though I have gotten compliments. People told me like it looks better after it's been shaded. So that's kind of like the point. The toughest thing is to be consistent on the social stuff. It shouldn't be tough. I got the space and the time and the energy, but I am freaking lazy. But here I am, working in Medibang. What's up, Medibang? My favorite sponsor, non-sponsor. Let me holler at your boy. Look, I looked up who the CEO was. Don't make me name drop you, bro. We need to get this relationship started real quick. It'll be mutually beneficial for the both of us. They're gonna come around. They're gonna see the possibilities sooner or later. They'll see things my way. I'm gonna get a email from Medibang talking about cease and desist. Oh no, this pencil finna die. Guess this video won't be long. Let me see how far I could get. So this is Chain Gun. This is Gally the Gun. That's his outlaw nickname. He's been accused of a crime he didn't commit. He wants to capture the culprits, clear his name, and go live as a free man. You know, get him a nice lady, a piece of land. You know, I put the mask on him. I was, huge fan of Zorro. Grew up on the Lone Ranger. Not that new movie that came out, not the Johnny Depp movie, the original one. I don't even remember if it's really good or not. I just remember being a kid, watching the Lone Ranger. And I remember the title, and at the end, his horse will stand up. He's on the horse, and he's got the mask on. And I wasn't even born when it first came out. It's just, my mom watched those channels with the old shows. The Munsters, Beverly Hillbillies. I'm surprised they haven't remade that. I mean, why not? Leave It to Beaver. What was that show with the guy who played Matlock? But he was a sheriff. I forgot, but I used to watch all that stuff. And, huge fan of the 90s Zorro movies with Antonio Banderas. So he kind of he's an outlaw. He puts on his mask and kind of does good deeds by accident, because the people he's chasing, they got a lot of stuff going on, kind of conspiratorial madness. And as he's chasing them and thwarting the plans, he's starting to get a reputation for doing so, even though that's not his main goal. I'm glad someone was reading the books and they noticed. They was like, he's not really a hero. He's kind of out for selfish reasons. People think he's a hero because they see him, defeating the bad guys. So they label him a hero, but I don't know if he really cares about all that. He's just out for his own reasons. I mean, it's really his relationships with other characters that kind of changed that. So many losses are taken as the story progresses. He's kind of okay, he feels obligated to kind of see things through. And so that's part of his character development. For Gally the Gun. This is Elizabeth August. Sort of like a sidekick he picks up along the way. She wants to search out the villains for her own reasons. And she kind of employs Gally to take her along. She has the bread. He's already kind of bounty hunting on the side, so, he's going to need the money for his piece of land he wants. So he'll take the bread. So he is concerned about traveling alone with the white woman. He is a black man in the 1800s. Maybe he can pose as a butler. Like I said with this story, there's the racial, what's the word I want to use? discussion around this time period. And I do touch on it. I feel like you have to. But at the same time, I don't want it to be the focus, I don't want this, I don't want it to overshadow the narrative, the story of the characters themselves. I'm not making a story about slavery. It just so happens this is a time period where slavery and racism is a main issue, a main factor, Like the character of Elizabeth August, I don't present her as racist, but she's very ignorant. She's been sheltered from those kind of things. Like her father ran a town, and he never owned slaves or nothing like that. She's fairly young. Galley's already fought in the war, and slavery has been abolished by the time they met. But like, she's not aware of the hardships that he has faced or is currently facing because of those things. And she's kind of oblivious, and so like a lot of it is just like revealed through them getting to know each other, and she's like discovering these things like, oh, it's amazing what a person can be blind to even when things are going on right in front of their face. It's kind of like that thing. And I don't want it to seem like, oh, it's Galley's job to educate her about racism and slavery. Like but it'll be interesting. I promise. I don't want to reveal it, but like her character arc is going to be one of the most interesting ones. And it has nothing to do with, okay, she discovered what racism and slavery was. But those revelations for her will be very informative as she makes her decisions in the future for what happens and the choices that she'll make. It's kind of like being his Robin. But I do enjoy the shading. I'm having fun with it. Because even though, like I said, I'm not really good at it. Like I've seen artists who are way better than me. But I'm, from when I started this whole endeavor, from volume 1 to now I'm in volume 4, I can see my progress, even as I'm doing it at this moment. I'm kind of developing a style, and there are choices that I like. And, choices that I'm making. And then, I'm kind of experimenting a little bit here and there with doing this and that. It's hard to explain it. You kind of got to experience it. And so, but I like my progress where I'm at. And I'm just keep going with my own shading style. Just to be dynamic. It's not about realistic portrayals of light and shadow. You know, it's just to make the characters look cool. So I'm gonna just stick with that dynamic. As you can see, nothing about this is portraying realism. It's very cartoony. I like to keep it that way. It's fun. That's that's the point of the cartoony style. It's fun. You have some like realistic elements, but I don't want to say realism is boring. It kind of it is to me. That's why I don't really like doing portraits. Like people ask me, could I draw them or can I do portraits? And it's like, yeah. Even though I want to do charcoal portraits on I'm gonna see if I could do charcoal on canvas, and I want to do portraits of people, but I want to do it because usually when I do portraits, I take a picture of a person and just go off the picture. I want to do live portraits. But I think I might hire models. Like I don't want to draw anybody I know. And I really want to do this just to test my skills. If I do enough of them, maybe I might do like a little gallery thing or something, sell them or something. But now, that's something that's in the back of my mind. I always wanted to do. I might try it this summer. So if I find a couple models. Or people who would model for me. Give me a little easel, some charcoal. And, do that whole situation. But normally, I don't like doing portraits. You know what it is? It's the vanity of it, right? Because like it's one thing for me to see a person and like be inspired and want to draw them. But I am unattracted to the prospect of somebody meeting me and figuring out that I can draw, and their immediate action is draw me, and I'm like, no, it does nothing for me. I don't want to draw you. If I wanted to draw you, I'll probably be asking you to draw you. And I've done that before, and what I usually do is, because how it usually works is I'm probably drawing in public. Then if I see somebody I want to draw, I'll just do a real quick sketch and draw them. A lot of times they'll never know. But sometimes it's depending on how it turns out, I might run up on them and be like, hey, I drew this picture of you. You want it? You can have it. Like they're like, it's a very weird thing. People never respond. They don't respond badly. They're just confused. I'm not gonna understand how that makes me look kind of creepy. Oh, you drew me? Yes. I'm an artist. This is what I do. Who gave you permission to draw me? No one. I guess it's kind of like if the picture is good, then you get away with it. And so I get away with it. Oh, how I do this, man? This is crazy. I don't know how I missed out. Like, I'm gonna show you. Cause I got it set up, but I didn't fill it in. And I'm like, how did I do that, man? I forget to do that. That's crazy work. And there's a couple things as I've been shading this chapter in particular that I found that I ain't even finished drawing. Like if I go up here, like where's the rest of her? I didn't finish her scarf. Oops. So let me, okay. I was like, what's going on? Slacking. But that's the whole point of this. You know, not only am I doing the shading, but this is my opportunity to go over the artwork again and see if I missed anything. And so it's also part of the editing process. So, you know, two birds with one stone type of thing. And so what I need to do, because I always end up with typos, what I'm going to do is when I'm done with the whole thing, I got to make sure to just sit down with it and go over it and read it. Because I just be so, like, I be so glad to be done. And then, you know, and for the most part, for each of the volumes, my cousin has done the formatting for, you know, publishing it on Amazon. And so I've always left that up to him. I kind of still want to, even though he's shown me how to do it myself. I kind of still want him to do it, and I will ask him if he's still able to. And if he does, that's great. And if he can't, you know, because he's a busy man. He's making his own book now, and so he might not have time for my shenanigans. But if he's able to do it, you know, we'll get it done. And if not, you know, I'll take a crack at it myself. But, you know, once it's done, I'll be ready to be done. So then it's like, that's me being lazy and rushing through the process. So part of my evolution is I'll probably, you know, do a proofreading to make sure that all the lettering and whatnot is up to par. This is the first volume that I made all the visuals all the way through, from roughing in the notebooks to all the page and the lines. And I didn't like I didn't put any dialogue in the, because I don't write the scripts when I'm doing the roughs in notebooks, because I start in notebooks. So when I'm doing the roughs in notebooks, I usually drop the dialogue in there, and just like every time, like so as I'm drawing it, I'm also thinking of the dialogue about what's being said, and then it's kind of like, okay, when I go to put the actual word bubbles and the dialogue in the actual pages, it's kind of going through the editing process, and I pull out the notebook and look at what I originally wrote for dialogue, and then, you know, I'll work it out. And the best way to work out your dialogue is to speak it out loud. You don't have to fully, like, become an actor. You know, I hate doing that. But speaking it out loud lets you know if it sounds good, you know. I hate when other people read my comics out loud. Because, you know, everybody does this jokey, cartoony thing. They never say the line seriously. Even though I don't really have, like, I can't say that I have these deep, serious lines. I do. I throw some stuff in there. A lot of that is reserved for the villain. Like the villains get the best lines. They're saying crazy poetic things, you know. And the hero is just like a regular dude saying regular things, you know. Because for the most part, like heroes are answering calls to action. They don't necessarily want to be there. So maybe they didn't think about what they would say in such moments. Where the villain is very orchestrated, you know. He's been planning for this moment. He's thought about what he would say. He knew this would happen, you know. He has his monologue all ready to go. You know, I once told someone that villains are children with power. And that's how you get the villain because just like the hero, like something happened to them, maybe in childhood or whatever, that kind of villainized them. And like what they want to do is change the world, where the hero, I don't want to say changes to the world, because sometimes the hero changes the world too. But the hero goes through a change of adapting to the reality of the circumstance. And if he does change the world or does something to make some type of external change for the environment around him, you know, it's selfless. He's doing it in a way so that it benefits everyone around him. Sometimes it doesn't benefit him personally at all. That's what makes him a hero. The villain wants that personal selfish gain, even though sometimes it might sound righteous, like Thanos. Well, he acted like what he was doing was for everybody else, but it was really for him and to appease his own ego and what he believed. You know, he believed himself to be so right, he had to prove it through his actions. Just because, you know, and that's also to speak to his ego, because he thought so highly of his own society that when his society failed, he just couldn't fathom that they weren't this perfect, high-minded, you know, sophisticated society. It couldn't have been, because then it wouldn't have failed. It would have progressed. But it collapsed, like most societies do. And, you know, he made up his reasons for that collapse. If your solution for the woes of society is to kill people, then I question your intelligence. Because if you take a close look, when it's kind of like, oh, there's not enough to go around, there usually is enough to go around. Like right now, in our world, in the real world, there's that conversation of overpopulation and scarcity of resources. But people don't understand how much we throw away. Right? So then there's no scarcity. Because then where's all the trash coming from? Right? It's really about access to resources. And then the people who are screaming overpopulation are those who have access to resources, but they want to maintain a certain level of luxury, you know? And the idea of sharing what they have with others would reduce their state of being, you know. man, if I donate some money, I can't afford that vacation to Miami. Oh, if I help feed these people, then I can't go to Hawaii. I can't have my private jet. You know, I need to own the island. You know, there's all this concept of luxury. People want to do certain things, and it seems as if the poor are getting in the way, or they feel bad about doing the things because the poor exist. So wouldn't it be easier if the poor just didn't exist, right? I mean, what if they just went away magically? That's why we never use the words and say, oh, they want to depopulate, or they say overpopulation, or it's population control. Let's just say what you really want to, the reality of what you're trying to do. You want to kill people so you don't have to share. It's really that simple. I want to live a fantastic life. I want to have more than I need. And there's nothing wrong with abundance, right? Especially if you work hard and, you know, I'm not a socialist. I'm not any type of ist. We're going to get into that later, now that I'm on politics, about people marrying their identity to an ideology. Ideology? Did I say that right? Whatever. You know what I'm trying to say. But I'm sorry, I just got caught into the artwork. I know I was talking, I had my own spiel going. All right, let's get into it. Let's get into the problems with ideologies. When you have an ideology designed to to govern, right? I call them mechanisms of governance, right? You suspend your own thinking to the paradigm of this ideology. So now the ideology thinks for you, right? Because you don't want to think for yourself. You don't want to look at each individual situation, each challenge, each problem, each social struggle, whether they be communal, individualized, family oriented, or even just like largely societal. You don't want to look at these things and think for yourself and, absorb the facts of the situations for yourself. You need an ideology that thinks for you, that has laid out certain rules of engagement for the way in which things should be dealt with. So not only do you not want to think about it for yourself, you surrender your thinking to the ideology, and then we're supposed to hire people who act on our behalf and do the work that we ourselves don't want to do. And in doing so, we find ourselves in this debacle that we face now. When the ideologies have been corrupted and used to subjugate all of us. And we're just fed lies after lies after lies after lies. And it's just not working, right? And it's not working because the issue is we surrendered our personal responsibility to the society we live in to others so that they can deal with the things we don't want to deal with, right? And that in turn gave them a lot of power. And we trusted them to do the right thing. They did not. They squandered their power, used it to build large amounts of wealth. And for them to do the right thing, they would have to give up that wealth. Man, they wouldn't. Because, I just thought about the notion, like, me personally, like, just thinking about this whole situation, for us to course correct in this country, like, technically, we wouldn't need anybody to give up their wealth. We wouldn't need anybody to die or go to prison for their crimes. For us to really course correct, we would just need the corruption to stop. Stop the corruption, retool education so that, we upgrade the academics, and then we also add in practical knowledge about financing, and also all of the trade works, put that back into the schools. And it wouldn't take a decade to really fix this problem because it would kind of rebalance itself. So it was like, the idea is like, okay, to make an offer to those who have sold us out. All right, before it gets so bad that your heads have to roll, we'll give you the option to just step away. You made your millions and your billions. Retire. Just leave. And then we could elect the new people of our choosing that we have groomed and trained ourselves. We can make adjustments, amendments that would prevent further corruption. And then, we can repair our society. We just need y'all to move out the way. Don't force us to move you. that's never, like, I'm a student of history, that never ends well. And the only reason things are getting this bad is because Americans are so used to a certain standard of living, of luxury, that we don't want to risk the little we got left with the whole debacle of, like, you know, violence in the streets. Even though there's violence in the streets to protest all this and blah blah blah, but it still hasn't gotten as bad as it can really get. It can get a lot worse. And so I think the average person is just hoping and praying that something gives, that we don't have to do the whole thing. Like, we don't want to do that whole thing. We don't want to have to do the whole revolution coup. Like, nobody wants to put their life at risk. Nobody wants to kill anybody else. We just want to live our lives. Like, just stop. You've made enough. You abuse enough women and children. You've killed enough men or sent enough men to their death. You've made billions of dollars. So just retire. Make a statement. Retire gracefully. Go live on your island. And just leave the rest to us. And good people will answer the call and they will stand up. And we can get the ball rolling. We shouldn't have to have some type of huge conflict. It just baffles me because the people who are doing this are obviously intelligent people. Because people talk about Trump not being intelligent. You got to have something there, right? How did these people become so wealthy and powerful with zero intelligence? So, and I understand being caught up in the wave of something and being blind to what's going on around you, but they can't be this dense to not know how this ends. It doesn't end well for anybody, okay? Like, we don't want to live in a country that's completely collapsed, where all wealth and resources has just been sucked completely dry, and every single person in the country is now living in absolute poverty. Like, I grew up in damn near absolute poverty. It is not nice. It is horrifying, okay? People think, oh, you're there in America, you don't know. People don't understand that there are pockets in America that are just as poor as third world countries. I lived in unincorporated Markham, Illinois. There was no water system. We lived off the well water. And that wasn't the best. A lot of times we had to go out and buy water. Or boil it. Like, so unfortunately, I've experienced like extreme levels of poverty right here in the richest country on the planet, supposedly. And it's insane. And then the crazy part is to be that poor around other poor people, but they're doing a little better than you. And then, like, the discrimination you face amongst your own people because of views on status and wealth and materialism. And so just to grow up at the bottom, like we always talk about people who grow up with different levels of economic status, but we have no idea what it's like to actually be at the very bottom. And I can say I've tasted that, you know. And the crazy thing is, a lot of times being at the bottom, like you have a strange relationship with money. Like you kind of like me personally. I don't know. People go either way because I've seen people who lived how I lived and they just become obsessed with money and material is the only thing because they get tired of just being discriminated against financially. And it starts with the person that's living next to you, who's doing a little better than you. And then God forbid you see the person above them and you go through your entire life invisible or treated poorly. And then and you figure out early on, okay, money's the answer. I need money, 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 money. But I kind of went the other way where I started to despise money. I hated money because it seemed like all the cruelty and judgment that I experienced, money was at the root of it. And then what really made me dislike money was the people who grew up next to me, how they would change when they started to acquire money. And it's like, what happened to you? And it is not like they won the lottery, right? Maybe they just got a job, or maybe they started hustling, and they didn't even acquire that much money. You didn't acquire enough money. You didn't acquire enough money to switch up like that. Like to completely turn trader. Like, I didn't even ask you for anything. You get a little bit of money, and this how you get a couple dollars, and you go insane. And it's like, is money doing this to people? But now, in my older age, I realize money is just a tool. And people are who they really are. There's this idea about getting drunk that it alters your inhibitions, and so when you get drunk, what's really in you comes out, and that's kind of like what it is with wealth, right? You see how money brings out what a person has been hiding. So money isn't the problem. Even capitalism, another ism, isn't the problem. The corruption of capitalism is an issue. And that's why we can't trust the isms, because the isms are easily corrupted. No ism, no socialism, capitalism, liberalism, conservatism, none of these things can ever have an answer for the multitude of human conscious awareness. No ideology will ever have an answer for the various modes of humanity. You just don't know how human beings will adapt and change, and sadly, what they will do to corrupt your system of governance. So when the system of governance is new and you introduce it, it might work very well. But it won't be long before some human beings see holes and opportunities in it, and they will exploit those opportunities. Because why not? Especially if exploiting those opportunities gives them wealth and power. So when you have a mode of governance, a system of governance, one must, you can't just have it as a tool. Put it as a tool. Like, if I'm a tradesman, I have a tool belt or I have a toolbox, and I got a lot of tools in the toolbox. And I understand them and I use them per the situation. Some situations need multiple tools. I do not surrender my identity to the tools. I am not a hammer guy where I only believe that only hammers are equipped to solve all problems. I'm not a screwdriver guy. I'm not a drill guy. Right? I'm a critical thinker. I see a problem, I engage the problem, and I analyze, and I look at my toolbox, and I say, what tool or combination of tools are necessary to solve this problem? And sometimes, like I said, you think about the multitude of, or the very nature of human consciousness and awareness. Sometimes the tool might not exist for that problem. You might have to create new tools. But I will never surrender my identity to the tool. The tool might be so good and multifaceted that I could promote the tool and say, hey, use this tool. It works very well for most situations. But never surrender your critical thinking to the tools, to systems of governance. Our rulers know this, and they don't. They pretend to be opponents to this system or that. And they pretend to uphold this system or that. But they're not abiding by any of those rules. They're looking out for themselves and leaving the rest of us out to dry. So we need to step our game up. Oh, you see, look, I got a lot going on. See, look, I done went on a rant about politics. I forgot all about the art. Okay. Luckily, I was able to finish that page. And so we're getting close. We're finishing the chain gun chapter with the shading. I'm running through the shading very fast because I only started this week. And I started at this CGO2, if you look closely, and I went through, 5, 10, 15, 16 pages already. So this is good work. After my rant, I'm going to sign off. One more shout out to Medibang for being the program I use to get this work done. Yo, CEO of Medibang, holla at your boy. Nobody's using Medibang to do what I do. I'm the only person that's making Medibang look this good in the States. I don't know about nobody anywhere else. Let me know who's doing what. Holla at your boy.